Hello methodology students. This is just a quick video to share with you how to do your next lesson plan, which is the PSLP, or Productive Skills Lesson Plan. So as you will soon see in your methodology Google Classroom, there will be this PSLP. Now this is going to be due in week 10 of your course, and similar to your recently returned receptive skills lesson plan, this one is pair work, and the parts of it are basically identical. So you have, if I can just pull up the template for you, you have section 1, which is always about fundamental lesson information. So you want to know, you want to share the age and the grade of the students. What's your language focus? Here your language focus is really important because you're actually practicing language. You're presenting and practicing grammar. So there's a guided discovery, and then there's two kinds of practice. And as always, list all of your materials, all of your documents, all of your books, whatever you're going to use. You can list it here. If you want to be crystal clear, if I can understand from the context, you don't need to attach all the materials, but if it's not clear from the way you've written, I might ask you to submit those materials. So if you want to be just 100% sure, I would just attach them, because that's going to make it clear to me what you're going for. So just like in the receptive skills lesson plan, you have the teacher column, a student column, and a rationale. This is section 2. It's about procedure. Now when I show you the model, you'll understand how much to include here. But one of the things that the RSLP showed is that things like objectives may not be clear to you yet, or things like what to include in the rationale, or even how much to describe in here versus how much you might want to include actual teacher and student talk. So the model should make that clear as well. Basically, you're describing what's happening. You might have a little bit of teacher talk to make yourself clear, but you don't need a lot here. That's what section 3 is for. And your rationale should always have the best concepts from class. At this point it's week 8, so you've been exposed to a lot of ideas in methodology, a lot of ideas in SLA, and even ICC, so you could plug any of those in here where they fit. And section 3, this is similar to your receptive skills lesson plan. You just want to say what part of the lesson plan is it? Is it the lead-in, restricted practice, authentic practice? Is it guided discovery? Or is it that feedback follow-up thing at the end? And teacher and student talk, this is where you need to include exact teacher talk. And notice it says the 5 most important interactions. See, if you go up here to section 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so there's 5 sections that you're including. And so here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That should be all you need. You can delete the rest of the columns. Those are just there if you want to include more. And most important interactions for each part. So that means if you're going to do the lead-in, the most important part is probably not just saying hello, right? The most important part, it could be getting students talking about the topic, or getting students to recall the topic from the previous class. You'll see in my model what I mean by the most important interaction for teachers, students. And then in the techniques column, there's a particular format which you kind of saw in the interactions chart. that these should be written in, but also you want to include the language systems that you're focusing on. And this, of course, is your rubric. Let me share with you the model which I created to scaffold this assignment. So here's the model, right? And note that all of our models are going to be for the intermediate level, so make sure that your lesson plan is written for the appropriate level. We're still in the novice range. Age and grade, class size and type, what's the topic, etc., and sample language for each of these, just like in the RSLP. The materials and sources, you can just list them if you feel like, as I mentioned earlier, if you feel like it's clear enough, you can just list them. If you feel like it's clear enough in your lesson plan that you can just list them here, but if not, then you can attach them to be crystal clear. And so this is what section 2 could probably look like. If we look at the left column here, what's the teacher doing and saying? Notice it's quite descriptive, and there's not a lot of actual teacher talk because that's going to be covered in the next section. So the teacher greets students and asks them to ask group mates a warm-up question. And I do offer the warm-up question. And then using the projector, this is what the teacher's doing, group work to S1, whatever, teacher's eliciting certain things. So you notice it's quite descriptive. It's not like a script at this point. Student, same thing. Students greet teacher, then ask partners the warm-up question. One student shares answers. At this point, it's not necessary to say this is S4, S5, S6, because you're just kind of describing the overall procedure. And the rationale and objective are two places where I think our methodology students could really improve. So that's where this model comes in. If we go to the objective, objectives, you'll remember from class, need to be observable. So something that you can see, something that you can hear as the teacher that tells you that the learners are accomplishing that. That's why we don't use understand or catch or get the meaning. Like, it's got to be something you can see. I don't know what get the meaning looks like. I don't know what understand looks like. But I know if a student answers 2 comprehension check questions verbally with a partner, that's something I can see. That's something I can hear. That's something I can tick off. I'm not going to do this, but theoretically I could say, oh, this student did it. This student didn't do it. Right? And that's going to help you a lot when it comes to making a rubric later in the semester for an assessment, because the rubric has to be things that you can see or hear and measure so you can determine who's doing it 100%, right? Who's doing it 50%? Who's just barely doing it, right? So that's why it needs to be observable. And you'll see a lot of examples of that from my objectives here. But please, please, please don't cut and paste. These are not, it's not a template. This is to inspire you. Oh, so it needs to be something that you can see, something that you can measure. That's why there's a number, and so on. So tell partners 2 facts from the listening lesson of the previous class. Right? So telling is something I can hear. That's speaking. 2 facts, that makes it measurable. You know, if you say one thing, you're doing it halfway. If you say 2 things, you've met that objective, right? And it's quite specific. It's not too vague, right? And so that's what objectives should be showing. And notice also about your objective that it's not trying to describe everything that's happening. That's why you have the description. This should just be one of the things. You should focus on one part of it and have one measurable, observable, specific objective about that one part. Okay, so notice this says nothing about greeting in the objective. It says nothing about, eliciting vocabulary in the objective, even though they're described here. Okay. It's just focusing on one measurable thing to give us an idea. And then in the rationale, what I've done is I've put some of the class concepts in bold. This will really help it stand out when your teacher goes through and grades them. And it also shows you the kinds of class concepts that you should be thinking about. So in the first one, the warm-up question is to lower affective filters, right? That's a Krashen idea. If I was really good, I'd put Krashen in parentheses. Teacher elicits the topic and context to ease students into the grammar focus. This will provide today's grammar with a meaningful context. Meaningful context is a general methodology concept. I just put it in bold because guided discovery is a meaning-focused grammar teaching technique. Again, that's a general methodology concept. You probably read that in Scrivener. So ideas like that, you know, I would review this with my partner and say, oh, so that's kind of the thing. That's how we should be writing this. Don't follow the model too closely. I don't want to see my own words in them, but use it to inspire you to write the right kind of objective, the right kind of rationale. You can notice a lot of concepts here. So I have like learning and input. As we learned, you know, have input, learning, and use or output. I have practice asking and answering questions, which is kind of our rationale for using the interaction technique of TSST. Orr's criteria are very important when you're talking about especially restricted practice activities. So you might want to go back and review. As a matter of fact, this semester was a video lesson, but heterogeneity, success orientation, validity, those kinds of criteria, because the purpose of them is exactly this, to rationalize your grammar practice activities, right? So you can put them there, they're a natural fit. Just other ideas from SLA are here. I've even got an idea from ICC to get you thinking that all of it could apply in the right moment, in the right context. Okay, which brings us to section 3. Now, section 3, this is where you want to show classroom language and classroom techniques. And I've included teacher and student talk here. Again, it needs to be the 5 most important interactions. My interactions, I let them develop a little bit so I can show a few things to you. Now, you only really need to show one interaction, and it's up to you to decide when that interaction is over and how much you want to show. I'll show you my examples here. So basically, I showed a moment in each section, right? Some of them are taken from the beginning of that part. Some of them are taken from the middle of that part. Some of them might be towards the end. But I wanted to find the most important interaction. As I said, like the greeting of the lead-in, I put it here, but I didn't stop there. It's not the most important interaction. I could have jumped in with the eliciting part, thinking of the content and the language of the last class. I could have jumped in there, but I started with a little greeting just to show you a couple different examples. Okay, so notice also the formatting. Please try to follow this formatting, which is quotation marks. There's a T in bold, quotation marks and italicized, all the talk. Make sure you're indicating individual students when you're doing this kind of group work to S1, because it shows 2 things. It shows, number 1, you have an idea of what students can produce at this level individually, and number 2, it shows that you're trying to call on different students and not only speaking to the whole class at once. So that's a useful thing. Notice the number of techniques that came up just in a greeting and a little group work to S1. You have all these techniques that kind of naturally come out of that. In my guided discovery, I start kind of at the beginning and I ask a couple of questions. You might be able to get away with asking one question as long as there's a full interaction there and you can say something about it and show also a balance of interactions, which is always important. You don't want to always go to the same interaction. You have different choices, right? And again, the systems I'm focused on here are going to be obviously grammatical system because this is guided discovery of grammar. If you didn't have grammatical system here, it would be a little strange because that's the primary focus. Now I also have phonological because, you know, as students are asking these questions or repeating the grammar, you know, there's going to be the intonation there, which I could have modeled, for example, but I didn't take a large, I didn't take a significant phonology focus here. I just know that in these moments, phonology is going to be happening. Restricted activity. My one interaction that I chose basically is giving my instructions. I thought this was one of the most important things that happens in this stage because if you don't give instructions well, then the students won't be able to succeed at this activity. So I have clearly described my instructions, and then I show a few comprehension check questions. So I could probably just show the instructions and a comprehension check question, and that would be enough. I did do a couple of comprehension check questions just to show you. All right. And also to model asking for help. Now in the authentic activity, just to show you how this can be done, I've kind of started in the middle. So I didn't show the instructions or modeling of the instructions for the authentic activity because I kind of showed that in the restricted activity. So a more important interaction might be I show what students are doing during the activity first. So these are students doing the role play, and then I show the attention getter, and then I elicit an answer from one student, or what did your partner share? Okay, so it's a little bit more than one interaction, but it shows a variety, which, you know, if I'm a methodology student, I want to show my teacher a variety of interactions that I know how to use appropriately. And notice here, the system here is the functional system because it's a fluency activity. If you turn in an assignment where you're describing your fluency activity and you don't mention the functional system, that's gonna cause some questions, right? I'm gonna have some questions about that because that is the primary focus of fluency practice, is the functional system, the discoursal system, but primarily functional. And then just to show you what can be done in the last part, it's kind of described in your RSLP and your PSLP, but you could do language feedback, which I've done here. You could do a follow-up task where you kind of move into a different language skill. You could do anything really, like as long as it's an additional task, it's not identical to what you just did and it's related to what you just did. And what I chose was language feedback here. So while the teacher's monitoring during the fluency practice, the teacher's taking notes about errors that the teacher hears, and then at the end puts them up on the whiteboard and has a little bit of has the students negotiate and address those errors. So that's something that I chose to do here, and a kind of model for you how that might be done. Oh, there's a few things you might notice about my my formatting too before I end this video, and that is if the S1 to S2 question just starts at the end, and I didn't show the end, I put start because I didn't show the end, it just starts. I did that with one of these S1 to S2 questions as well, because I just show the start of it, not the end of it. And also, it's not technically one of your interactions, but it's important, so I'm including when I'm doing comprehension checks. So instructions CC. I might do a language comprehension check, so language CC, right? So keep that in mind as you write this with your partner. Make sure you guys both do about 50%, and check out your rubric to be crystal clear. Notice that one of the criteria is originality, so don't